It is 1/22/2025. Happy freaking Tuesday. What's going on the Level Up College Football Podcast? If you can't tell, I am stoked. I am super excited because something special just happened in the last 24 hours in college football. But we're going to get to it. Thanks for all you guys rocking with us on Fans First Sports Network, Level Up College Football Podcast. In the building with my co-host, Sarah C., Andy P. Y'all, what is cracking? What's up, Andy? What's up with you, bro?
You know, I'm glad that Ohio State kicked that field goal to cover the 8.5 points. I felt really good about that bet up until the fourth quarter. We'll talk about that a little bit here. But I'm happy for you and Sarah. I'm happy for the Ohio State fans out there. It is very funny. A friend of mine sent me this text that he's like, you know, when we think of college sports Cinderellas, you've got George Mason making their tournament run as a 10 seed. You've got Villanova winning the title as an 8 seed, and those Ohio State Buckeyes as an 8 seed, underdogs in 0 games, winning the whole thing.
Facts. Sarah, what's cracking? What's up, my Buckeye partner? What's going on with you?
Oh, I'm still riding the high. I'm still watching as much video as I possibly can, reading about the stories, thinking about everything that happened. I popped a little bit of bubbly after. Probably was a little too late, so I probably shouldn't have done that, but I enjoyed it. I was with just a small group of friends. They were all rooting for the Buckeyes too with me, so it was a really great time. I loved everything about those last 4 games. I thought it was some of the best football I've seen, and loved the ending, but I didn't celebrate until I saw all 4 zeros and end of the fourth quarter, because that's how I roll as a football fan.
Man, listen, at least you ain't as bad as I was. I was all out on social media platforms. You guys probably saw me. I was posting up Buckeyes eating Lucky Charms, talking about say uncle. I was out there cutting up. You know, because I knew what at 31-7, it was over. It was Notre Dame could not score 30 points. I knew that. There was no way they could do it. But it got close at the end, and I think we're going to talk about that as we talk about the game. Listen, first, I got to thank everybody that joins and rocks with us in the live chat. Thanks to everybody that listens to us on Fans First Sports Network, wherever you get your audio, your audio podcast, Google, Apple, Spotify. But, y'all, we're here to talk about the coronation. The coronation of the 2025 season. The Ohio State Buckeyes have been crowned the 2024-2025 National Football Champions, right? I want to talk to you guys and throw it out there as far as what did you think of the game, the recap of the game, the highlights of the game, and then sort of like what's your highlights of the tournament? Because I think there was spectacular plays, not just played by Ohio State, but by other players through this first-time 12-team playoff tournament. So, Andy, I'm going to go with you too, or with you first. Off the bat, what you thinking about what happened with the 2025 National Championship game?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I was really impressed by in this game was how Notre Dame was able to get their punches off against Ohio State. Like that opening drive was everything that we talked about in last week's show about Riley Leonard getting the ball way too many times, about Notre Dame winning at the point of the line of scrimmage and doing all the things that they needed to do. The problem was that after that first scripted drive, when Ohio State counterpunched and adjusted, it was clear that Notre Dame didn't quite have that level of flexibility necessary. And you see that in football, and that's what makes football games interesting. And I think a great example of that counterpunching was probably the play of the game, the obvious one, which was the big third down conversion, Will Howard to Jeremiah Smith. And we could talk about how great Jeremiah Smith is and like just the way that he reads the leverage on the corner, the way that he is able to, like, that is probably one of the best examples I've seen of how a wide receiver can adjust to the cornerback coverage by the way, like reads the corner, fakes the corner out, gets the corner opening his hips just the wrong way and takes off in a way he's wide open. But that play doesn't happen. I think it was Travion Henderson who was the running back on that play. Oh, Notre Dame was was singled up on Jeremiah Smith and playing one high because they sent 6 guys on the blitz and they linebacker in the gap. And the difference in that play versus every other time this season when Will Howard has not been able to find Jeremiah Smith was that Henderson picks up the blitzer and stops him. Just a straight up, like an amazing running back blitz pickup, amazing execution on the play. And those are the little things that you want to see a team improve upon as the season goes along. And I think it was just a great encapsulation of both, one, Ohio State being far more willing to take risks as the season went on, but 2, also executing the little things that they just weren't doing early in the year need to happen in order for you to be able to take those risks. And so for me, like I think that was like the play of the game. And I thought that was like one of the cool highlights of that moment, is that we'll see that play forever and just remember, like, hey, it wouldn't have happened without all these little things coming into play to allow Ohio State to actually take advantage of that moment.
Man, I freaking love it, Andy. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I mean by, on Fans First Sports Network Level Up College Football Podcast, we break stuff down because sometimes it's the little things that people miss. They see the explosion, but we break it down. Sarah, your thoughts about the coronation of the Ohio State Buckeyes, what you saw, and what was your highlights from the game?
Lots of highlights, in my opinion. I was extremely, extremely impressed with Chip Kelly's just full game plan and how he came in after Notre Dame's first drive. I thought that he really just came in there and knew, he's like, I'm trusting in my guys. I'm really going to show, how much talent we really do have. I mean, Quinshon Judkins had one of the best games I've seen, not even just, in the playoffs, but of his year. I know he's always been solid, but this, I think, was just his, his breakout year, or his breakout game, almost like the one that really puts him in that conversation for what's going to happen to him following college football. So I was really impressed by that. I was telling Andy earlier before we started the show, I have become more and more impressed with Will Howard as the season has gone on. And I think that just the way that this whole team came in after that loss, it just really shows that they were like, okay, that was an anomaly of a game. And that's all I'm going to live off of for the rest of this past season. Because they came in and they realized that, you throw the ball to Jeremiah Smith. You see how smart he is. The way he even talked after the game about how he was reading the man-to-man coverage and how he knew that he could get past these guys. He is beyond one of the smartest, 18-year-olds out, maybe 19 now. I can't really remember.
No, he's 18. He just turned 18 in November.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's what I thought. I thought he was only 18. One of the smartest 18-year-olds. I was watching some stuff just today, because I wasn't at my house whenever the game was going on, so I didn't watch all the post-game coverage. But Booger McFarland was on, and he was talking about how he saw him in high school and how he knew then that how great this kid's going to be. So I'm just beyond impressed by that. And the NIL players were the stars, but you wouldn't be where we were if we didn't have that defense all season, and we wouldn't be there if we didn't have that defense in these last 4 games. Because, we put up some scores, but that last game, especially against Texas, that defense needed to show up, and they did. And it was just such a fulfilling ending. Yes, because we won, but I just felt so happy for those guys, especially seeing Jack Sawyer and JTT and Latham and the other secondary player that is
Jordan Hancock, Caleb Downs. Who you want to know? Jackson Espinosa. Who you want to know? Deshaun Burke, Trayvon
Cody
Burke.
Cody Simon too.
Cody Simon, linebacker. Okay,
linebacker. Yeah. Just all those guys, seeing them finally, they were all there for that Georgia game that I almost thought we were going to pull off, which I was really, that was a sad day for me. And that's why I root for CJ as much as I can when he's not playing against us. But now I just as a whole, I was just extremely impressed with the whole team. I'm extremely impressed with what we're going to still see out of Jeremiah Smith. I'm sad to see a lot of the guys leave, but I think that this coaching crew really came into those 4 games and realized what they have and knew what to do with it. And it was extremely, extremely impressive to watch.
Man, listen, I don't disagree, Sarah. That's great points as well, because you talked about how a team came together on a mission to fulfill a dream. because that's what they came back for. That's what that $20 million in NIL, because I'm seeing all kind of people rag on us about you paid $20 million. Well, we paid $20 million to retain the freaking team. We played for Will Howard. We paid for Caleb Downs. We paid for Seth McLaughlin, and we paid for Quinshon Judkins. Everybody else, they're homegrown Buckeyes, but they came together for a mission. Now, my highlight, I'm just me. Will Howard made a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
Will Howard has put himself in my position or my thinking as the number 4 quarterback on the board. He jumped Quinn Ewers, in my opinion. I mean, I'm talking about I'm probably going to go Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, Jalen Milroe, Will Howard. You can call me a homer or bias or all you want to, but that kid made a lot of money. His playoff play was outstanding from beginning to end. And big-time players make big-time plays in big-time games. And that's what he did. Yeah, we talk about Jeremiah Smith making the great catch all throughout the playoffs. Talk about Emeka Buka's play. Travion Henderson catch the 75-yard screen. All the little stuff like that. But who was throwing him the ball? Will Howard. He's super accurate, man. He's a poor man's Josh Allen. So I think Will's going to be good at the next level. Maybe I think he has the potential to one day be a starter, but that's just me. He's got to be in the right place to be developed. Okay. Now, second part of the question before we take our first break. Give me your number one highlight out of all the games that were played, the 12-team playoff, the one play that's going to stick out in your head like, man, that's why we have a 12-team playoff. Sarah, I'm going to start with you. The number one play that you can remember, be like, oh, my God, I'll never forget this.
Man, that's a tough one because I think the play for me would be the last game for Ohio State pre-championship game with Sawyer and the scoop.
Ooh.
I mean, that's something that's going to live in Ohio State lore for the rest of the time. But one of the games that I think I would like just as a whole and as someone, who like I enjoyed from the beginning to end was the Arizona State Texas game. I thought that's why you have a playoff because, Arizona State wouldn't have been in any discussion of being even in contention for a national championship. And the way that they came into that game, and yes, they lost, but it made you really believe in that team. And it really made, look at what Arizona State's done now. They gave Dillingham a huge, boost and everything like that. So I think that in seeing Cam Skattebo like really, become a player in these playoffs, and he bumped up his paycheck, I think a little bit too. I think he's going to get, a little bit earlier draft status. And I think a lot of people thought that he was going to get going into the beginning of the season. So I would take both as that because I really, really enjoyed that game. And I was rooting for Arizona State just because of the way that they fought so hard. And then, that Jack Sawyer play will forever live in my brain because I was getting a little, again, being a nervous Pittsburgh fan for as long as I have been, and an Ohio State fan, those are the moments where I'm like, okay, now I can calm myself down again. So I would say those are the two biggest highlights I found in those playoffs. Absolutely.
Andy P, man, the moment it'll stick with you, man. Tell me, man.
Honestly, I think, game aligned that Texas-Arizona State game was amazing, and Cam Skattebo is a cult hero because of that game. But I think the play of the tournament, I think for me, was the Jeremiah Love touchdown against Penn State, where he not only shakes off one defender, but he shakes off Abdul Carter, and he's got the knee brace. He's not healthy. He's pushing into the end zone. And honestly, like that's the reason that we got Notre Dame in the title game as opposed to another Ohio State Penn State rematch was just this guy putting the team on his back on a bad knee. And we saw in that Ohio State game, he gave everything to get Notre Dame into that game. And I think that is one of those like sliding doors for Notre Dame is like, what if Jeremiah Love doesn't get hurt going into the playoff? Because I think then they have a very different game against Ohio State, but he gave everything he could to give Notre Dame this moment. And I think that, Notre Dame, we haven't talked a lot about them in this because obviously Ohio State won the game. They won pretty convincingly, but like Notre Dame is set up really nicely now because we had no expectations of them going into this tournament, and they made the final. They are now going to be able to say that they are a team with the caliber of players to play for a national title, and I think that kind of play is going to be what you remember most about Notre Dame moving forward, and will do wonders on the recruiting trail as they try to build out this roster and now try to level up their game now that they know what's going to be necessary in order to kind of take it to the next level and potentially win one of these things against the Ohio States or the Oregons or these teams that are investing so much in their NIL and in their football teams.
Man, I love both of those plays you guys call. Now, listen, I love them. I'm a homer, y'all know. I mean, if you can't tell, look at my clothes. All right. But the play that I'm going to remember for the Buckeyes is probably not a play you guys will remember until I actually tell you. The play I'm going to remember for the Buckeyes winning the playoff or in the playoff is when they cracked Nico's helmet. In the first round against Tennessee, when Nico turned the corner on an RPO, and there was a split crack from his helmet from the top to the bottom. I promise you, right then and there, I turned to my family and I said, we're going to win the national championship. Because at that moment, I knew that they were so focused, it was unreal. I knew at that point, that was the $20 million roster. That was the Ohio State team that people were begging for. And that defensive play out of Cody Simon and Caleb Downs and Jordan Hancock sealed the deal. Sealed the deal. I knew it. I'm telling you, I knew it. I was worried. I was nervous, even with that first catch that Jeremiah Smith got. But when Tennessee went on offense and they cracked Nico, I was like, oh, it's over. It's over, man. So that's the thing. And I think that's why we all love college football. Because there's going to be moments and times and memories, and it doesn't matter if you're an Ohio State fan, Tennessee fan, Oregon fan, Texas fan, Notre Dame fan, Penn State. It doesn't matter. But you have moments in time that you capture and you remember. And that's what makes college football so special. Because you remember, and then you're like, man, I remember, and I remember, and I remember. And that's why I think all of us love college football, right? All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to pause for the cause. We're going to pay some bills on Fans First Sports Network, Level Up College Football Podcast. If you're watching this live on YouTube, we'll be right back after we pay a few bills. If you're listening to us, just give us an opportunity to get those things paid for, and we'll be right back with the Level Up College Football Podcast on Fans First Sports Network. And we're back with the Level Up College Football Podcast. Mr. Woodside, man, thanks for rocking with us. It's not just congratulations to me. It's also congratulations to Sarah. But it's also congratulations to my boy Andy P., who's a closet Buckeye fan. He loves the Syracuse Orangemen, but he's a closet Buckeye fan. So I promise you, we got some love for him too over here. And it's congratulations on another season of the Level Up College Football Podcast. Y'all, we've been doing this wall-to-wall, me and Andy, for a couple of years. Sarah jumped in this year. Hey, man, we couldn't have asked for a better product on the field. That's why we're going to make sure we give you a great product. All right, guys, next question. Next talk. Where does this team rank in college football history as far as an all-time great team? Where do they rank? Your opinion? You know, you can say whatever. It doesn't matter. We're not going to take it personal. Where do they rank? Sarah, I'm going to go with you. Where do they rank?
This is a tough one for me because, I mean, I've been an Ohio State fan for almost 20 years, but I haven't paid as much attention to everybody outside of Ohio State in the Big Ten. So I don't feel like I am the best at it. This year I've learned a lot and I've really loved watching it. I think that they were the best team for this season. I think that they came in that way and they ended that way. I think this was the time to show and shine that, you know, this 12-game playoff is good.
We lost her. She froze.
Oh.
We got her. Andy, let's just skip to you, bro.
Yeah.
Where do they rank?
Yeah, I think that one of the interesting.
She's back. There she go.
Oh, was
There
that
we
me that
go.
went away?
Yeah. Froze.
I was like, everyone was just spinning. Sorry.
Yeah.
But no, I, definitely think that this was one of the best teams I've ever seen when because I have always watched the national championship game. I also think it was one of the best competitive games that I've seen in a very long time, because the past 2 years have not been extremely, extremely competitive. And it was really nice to be able to watch, even though like I was rooting for one side a lot more heavily than the other. I really enjoyed the fact that Notre Dame made it a game. And, along with what Annie said, I think that's going to be an interesting program to watch. But I did just see some breaking news. I don't know if about Al Golden. Now is probably more than likely leaving. So I'm very intrigued to see what's going to happen to that defense. So so like I said, I can't really go back. I mean, I have my teams that I loved over the years, but I think that this was one of the most impressive teams I've seen in a long time. And I would definitely rank them somewhere close to the top, but I don't want to be, the one to just say they're number one because they're the most recent. And I'm super happy right now.
That's fair. That's fair, Sarah. Andy, man, listen, bro. We've been at this a couple years, man. We done talked about all-time great squads, dog. Where they at, man? Where they at for you, Andy?
I mean, one of the interesting things from Bill Connolly over on ESPN, Buckeyes are the first team to play 6 top 5 teams in a single season. We'll probably see that happen more over the next few years as the SEC and Big Ten continue to have stack conferences. But the Buckeyes are also the first team to ever have 5 top 5 wins in a season. The previous record was 4, which was set by 1943 Notre Dame, 1967 USC. So it's been a minute. But the team that I would put number 1 is another team that had 4 top 5 wins, and that's 2019 LSU. That's Joe Burrow, Jefferson, Chase, like that team that was just, there was no equal to them all season. I think that as history goes on, we're going to see that LSU team as probably the greatest team ever and the biggest blip ever, because when you look back, like Ed Orgeron's not even coaching anymore. Like that team is just absolutely the definition of catching lightning in a bottle. Yeah. I think when you look at the more like traditional program teams, I think that this Ohio State team can hang with, the Kirby Smart Georgias, the Nick Saban Alabama teams. I don't think that there's any one of those teams that I can definitively turn around and say like, oh yeah, they're so much better than this Ohio State team in any way, shape, or form. And I think that there's plenty of matchups there. I think that the only teams that you can really hold a candle to this Ohio State team and say like, hey, this is a kind of level of dominance down the stretch that was equal is when you start looking at, say, a 2001 Miami team that just absolutely obliterated anybody that they played. The 1995 Nebraska teams, 2004 USC, or the 2005 Texas teams. Those are the only ones that you really saw do what Ohio State did down the stretch, which was say like every single game we can absolutely take it to you and win the biggest games. So I think that at the end of the day, this Ohio State team is probably going to be one of the best champions that we've ever seen, just because of how dominant that road to the title was. But I do think that when we talk about like the greatest team of all time, like that LSU team is probably going to stand head and shoulders over everybody for a very long time.
Yeah. I agree with both of you guys' points, right? If I had to rank a top 5, all-time top 5, as far as the best teams ever, Andy, I would go the 2001 Miami Hurricanes as the best team. Just not based on the fact that they were undefeated national champion, but look, I mean, Sean Taylor didn't start on that team. Ed Reed started. Sean Taylor was on the bench. What's his name? Bubba Franks didn't start on that team. He was on the bench. The tight end that played at the Cleveland Browns, whose dad
Dorsey,
he was on the bench. That team was loaded, right? So I go 0-1 Miami. I go 19 LSU, lightning in the bottle. I mean, heck, the 2 best wide receivers in the NFL was on that team, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Yeah. But I go number 3, Ohio State 2024. right? Probably number 5 would be 2017, 2018 Alabama. Just because the depth and the talent. And I'd probably go number 5, that 2004 USC Trojan team, right? But this 22, and the reason why I can't put them number 1 because they didn't go undefeated. But Andy, you had said the perfect preference. They ran the gauntlet. They beat everybody that was a dog. It's never been done before in college football history. No team has ever won 4 playoff games. And isn't it just, it's not by coincidence that in 2014, when they changed the format, Ohio State wins the championship. In 2024, they changed the format, Ohio State wins the championship. I can't wait till 2026 because it's going to go to a 16-team playoff. And we're going to win it again. You have to give homage to them because they ran the gauntlet. Their playoff position as an 8 seed has never been seen before. Tennessee, Oregon, Texas. And Oregon and Texas was home games. It might as well have been home games. And then to get Notre Dame in the national championship, yeah. Top 3 all time. Top 3 all time. But, that's just my thoughts. One more question. If you had to pick an MVP for the 12-team playoff, one guy, you said this guy was the most dominant player or he did what he was supposed to do in that tournament, who would you pick? Who's your number 1 pick? Sarah, go to you first.
Oh, man, that's a tough one. That really gives me a hard time because, I want to look and say that it's definitely somebody on that championship team. And I would say probably closer to the fact that I think it's actually an entire squad that would probably get it from Ohio State. That's why it would be very hard for me to pick just one player on that team, in my opinion. So that's kind of where I'm at when it comes to the Ohio State. As a whole, man, this one, oh God, I have to even go back into my brain about who played so super well and still didn't do really well and who played absolutely. Oh man, this is a tough question for me. And I wish I would have been slightly more prepared for this.
It's okay. You go with your gut. Go with your heart.
Yeah,
You got one person.
Geez, that's a really, really tough one. But like I was saying, with the Ohio State, I was going to definitely say the defense, but okay, I'm going to be extremely biased because you know what? Out of the 4 games, I think that this player, and like I said earlier, it's Jeremiah Smith. I think that being a freshman and doing what he can do is going to be extremely impressive, and I cannot wait to watch him. I was just trying to go back. You can go back to some of those very single games, but it's the teams that played 4 games. I think that you have to look at those too and really pick them because you didn't get to see as much of some of those other teams, in my opinion. So it's hard to look at that. I know I'm being extremely biased and just being that person, but
that's fair. That's fair. It's your opinion.
I just got more and more impressed with him as the season went on, and then watching him in this championship run. You can even go into I'm more impressed with Chip Kelly after these 4 games than I was during most of the season because he finally, came up with a game plan where you brought him in a lot more and used him and saw what he could really do. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at when it came to that.
Quad Father, we agree with you, man. Thank you for the comment, man. I really do think it helped Ohio State, so for sure, bro. Absolutely. Andy, your MVP, bro.
I'm going to go a little bit off the beaten path here because I think that you can mention Jeremiah Smith, Will Howard. You can mention Jack Sawyer for having probably the play that gets Ohio State there. I'm going to say Donovan Jackson, offensive guard on the Ohio State line, because the biggest question that we had going into this was Ohio State's interior line has been decimated all season long, and that's how Michigan basically destroyed Ohio State. Was they didn't give Will Howard time to throw because there was pressure in his face all game. They couldn't get the run game going in the way Chip Kelly wanted it to go, and instead of rejudging their offensive line by position, like what Oregon had to do when they had offensive line struggles through the early part of the season, Ohio State basically said, look, we've got some NFL quality guys here. They're just going to have to pick it up and do more than they've done so far. And Donovan Jackson was one of these guys who, especially in that national title game, was just absolutely manhandling interior defensive linemen for Notre Dame, and was one of, if not the most impressive things that I've seen from an Ohio State player not named Jeremiah Smith this season. And so I just think that, like, when you're talking about MVP and most valuable to this whole thing, if the offensive line plays like it did in the Michigan game, Ohio State doesn't get out of that Rose Bowl. They don't beat Texas. They don't beat Notre Dame. They went through the 3 best interior defensive lines, not named Penn State, who they handled earlier in the season. They had to face them 3 games in a row, and that guy was just an absolute pro. He's going to be a 10-year NFL veteran kind of guy that you see in the Pro Bowl every year, and you don't really think about until he's on some Hall of Fame ballot. Like, I just came away super impressed with his performance in particular, and how much that lifted the weakest unit on the Ohio State team.
Yeah, man, I love Donovan Jackson. Donovan's going to be a great pro. I think he goes no later than the 2nd round. No later, because he showed the versatility to kick out to tackle if need be, but he was an All-American guard. So, yeah, I love that take out about Donovan Jackson, man. Y'all, I got a Buckeye, but I got a guy that I don't know if people talked about him, but not to the extent that they talked about Howard, Emeka Buka, Travion Anderson, Quinshon Judkins. Caleb Downs is my MVP. I mean, when you go back and you actually watch the All-22 film and watch what he was able to do from a strong safety standpoint and how he made it possible for Ohio State to send 5 and 6 and 7 players on a blitz. And then when they sent him on a blitz, he got home. When they needed a pick, he made the pick. Caleb Downs was all over the place. Him and Lathan Ransom. I mean, it's hard to split hairs because Lathan Ransom showed me he's a top of a 2nd or 3rd round pick too. He showed me that. He is strike free. Oh, he's coming downhill. So, but Caleb Downs, man. Caleb Downs, this might be biased to say, but I think Caleb Downs is the best safety that we've seen come out of college since Sean Taylor. That might seem biased, but I think that kid's really that. He's him, and by having, and Sarah, that's where I'm going with this whole thing, is that our best 2 players, maybe on offense and defense, come back to the team next year. Even though we lose all these guys, we lose all these guys, this $20 million roster, Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith ain't going nowhere. They're right back next year. And so, that's, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just being biased, but I got Caleb Downs. All right, y'all, we got to take another quick commercial break. We got a couple more subjects that we're going to talk about before we get off the College Football Level Up College Football Podcast. If you're watching this live, thank you all you guys for rocking with us in the live chat. We're pulling up your comments. We appreciate you. We'll be right back after we pay some bills with the Level Up College Football Podcast live on Fans First Sports Network and YouTube. And we're back with the Level Up College Football Podcast. Sarah C, Andy P, Big G sitting in the building. Y'all, listen, I've been excited, man, since about Sunday. And again, they played on Monday, but I've been excited about since Sunday, man. But listen, man, this was a great thing. So I don't want to dwell in it. I mean, we're him, we're the champs, but we cover college football on this channel, right? So we got to talk to you guys about real stuff, real issues. And one of the issues is the transfer portal. I think the complexity of the transfer portal has changed college football forever, right? Especially what you just seen what Ohio State did. So we're going to just talk about a couple of transfer portal updates. Anybody you want to talk about. And now, because of the way the transfer portal is done, do you think this will go on forever? And really, your national championship team will have transfer portal guys in it that play key roles. Andy, I'm going to go to you first, bro. Transfer portal, what you thinking, man?
Yeah, I think one of the, we talked a little bit in the last couple of weeks with the Carson Beck news and all these other quarterbacks that are moving around. But I think one of the biggest ones that flew under the radar was Fernando Mendoza, who's transferring from Cal, who had, a decent season this year. They went 6-5 and, obviously hosted College Game Day earlier this season, but he's going to Indiana. And one of the biggest question marks around Indiana coming into this season, their success this year was built on Cignetti bringing his team to Bloomington. And now a lot of those guys are graduating, even with the grad rules. They're not keeping key players. And so they're in this situation where Cignetti has been recruiting well, but not at a elite level, even for, a Big Ten school. And we're in this position where they were going to take a massive step back without getting a proven signal caller back there to run the offense. And I think Mendoza is exactly the kind of guy you're looking for. He's got 2 years of eligibility left, but he's already shown that, he threw for over 3,000 yards and threw the ball over 375 times. He is a guy who you can put back there and ask to run the offense in totality, but he's also a guy that you can build around and try to get a high profile quarterback recruit in the door, learn from him, and then elevate him later down the line when he's more ready. Like, this is a massive win for Cignetti if he's able to hold Mendoza and Mendoza's able to, do what we think he can do, because this basically stabilizes Indiana over the next 3 years over the next 2 years as Cignetti tries to show that he's more than a one-trick pony. And Indiana is now in the same, the reason I'm kind of tuned into them is that they're very kind of similar to Syracuse right now. Like, these are historic basketball programs that going into next season with the new house settlement, these programs have to decide, are we going to invest as much as possible in football, or are we going to invest in these basketball programs that a still sizable portion of our alumni base feel should be one of the blue bloods in the sport? Yeah. And now they've got this balance of how do we balance football? How do we balance basketball? And at least from an Indiana standpoint, it looks like they are prioritizing football, which is something I never thought I'd say. But they made the playoff. They had the best season in program history with this guy in his first year. Like, there's no reason they can't do it. And getting somebody like Mendoza is proof and kind of like that first step to show. I don't think Indiana is going to treat football like a sideshow to basketball. I think football is the main attraction at Indiana right now.
I agree, Andy. Sarah, your thoughts about the transfer portal? Any news you want to talk about? Any player you think is going to make a big time splash with a program, moving forward? And is this the way? Did the Buckeyes show you the way? This is the way to do it and get that chip.
I think most of the top teams in college football this year pretty much showed us how the transfer portal can be extremely helpful, especially in those quarterback positions, because, Riley Leonard and Will Howard both played for different universities last year. And that really says something because, like we said, people give Ohio State all this crap for our NIL money. And it was mostly to keep the people that we have to get them back and win. But it was those small little extras that we put in that extra money that really helped. And I think that, like Dennis said, it might be for those schools that have money versus who doesn't. But I think that Congress thing is really going to really show us what it can be soon, what it really is like to make college football really almost like a mini NFL. And just like what Bill Belichick did, now he has a GM running his program. He is going to be the one doing these kinds of things. And now a lot of these college programs are going to have to start doing that if you want to be successful in the transfer portals. I think that says a lot. I think that you can't discount the transfer portal because it's the new world that we live in. I can't wait to just see how it kind of starts to regulate itself. And I think the teams that are successful with it is because they really know what they're focusing on, and they're not just going out there and just getting who's the top name and everything like that. I think it's a weird one, but I'm very intrigued to see what's going to happen with the new quarterback at the quarterback from Duke this year, who's now going to Oregon State. I was kind of surprised that he went to
Malik Murphy.
Yeah, Malik Murphy. I couldn't remember his last name. That was going to bug me. I was going to say Morris, but I'm very intrigued to see what he's going to do this season for an Oregon State team that hasn't really been super successful, and they're still in that weird Pac-12 right now. But the thing is, and it's just like these smaller conferences right now, is that if you get that big money paycheck with your deals, you don't have to spread it out to as many teams, which is why I think, and that's why Notre Dame's probably, it's going to be a couple more years until we might possibly see them join a conference, because when they sign their deals, they're the only ones getting that money. And that's why they're able to be super successful in these types of things. So I can't wait to hear what this April decision is. I think that's going to make a lot more sense to everything and really kind of dial in on these, how it's all going to work out. But I like it. I think it's great for these players, because I think that sometimes, you start off and you really play really hard and you want to be able to go to these bigger schools so that you can get your money and that you can get higher in the NFL draft. Like, this is what you want to do. So you should have the ability to continue to get better and continue to see, be on TV more and stuff like that. So that's what I see out of the transfer portal. I see the negatives, but I try to look a little bit more on the positive ends because of how much it's helped a lot of these players and some of these teams.
Yeah. Hey, Quadfather said, hey, man, I'm digging it, man. Quadfather Dennis Pavlok, man, thanks for the comment. He says the portal works for teams who have the money. The ones who don't are most likely out of luck. I agree, Quadfather. I think that you're going to have to it takes money to make money. And, that's how you got to do it in the sports. And you have to look at it like these schools are huge money makers. So you got to invest the money in the program that can build you a team. North Carolina is not a traditional a powerhouse college football team. But watch what Bill Belichick does in North Carolina in the next 3-4 years. I promise you, within 3 years, as long as he's the coach, they're going to be in the playoff, because they're going to build. The money's going to get invested from the donors and the different groups to come together to get these guys on campus. And Sarah, you said it already. Spring portal is going to be nuts. I am so excited. We had the winter portal, right? And it's like crazy to see too. But I'm telling y'all, spring portal is going to be nuts. There are going to be players jumping and bailing left and right in the spring, more than you've ever seen before. Because what's going to happen is these programs are going and evaluate where they're at concerning depth. And they're like, okay, we need one guy here and we need one guy here, right? And listen, I'm just going to be honest. You guys know this. There's backdoor conversations all the time. This person knows that one knows this one can get in contact with that one. And teams will basically salvage and scrape players. They'll say, hey, look, man, you hit the portal, we'll give you $4 million. You hit the portal, we'll give you $3 million. And you're going to see that happen. So, yeah, it's a money game, and you got to manage it. So a CEO running programs for portals away from coaching is the way to go. All right, y'all, we got one last topic, one last thing. Way too early, top 25 for next season. Because, listen, we're going to be with you guys. We're going to do shows to keep it going, for the college football, because, it's the dead time, supposedly. Not really for us, because we're going to talk about draft evaluation, combine players getting ready to go to NFL, who we think is where and what we think about the incoming freshmen. But who do you think is your top 10 for next season? Sarah, I'm going to give you top 5 versus 10. Let's go 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Who's your top 5?
Well, I definitely wish I could say Ohio State. I think that they'll still be in the rankings. I still think that they're going to be in the discussions, but Texas is my number one right now. I think that what they're going to be walking into this next season is going to be extremely interesting. Archie Manning is a much better quarterback than Quinn Ewers. Yeah, we didn't get to see it as much as we would have liked this past season, but Quinn Ewers did not do himself a lot of favors near the end of the season, in my opinion. And if that's injury based, hopefully he does well. I don't wish him bad at all. But I definitely think Texas is probably in the top. I definitely think, sadly, that Michigan is probably going to be right back in that top 5 next season.
Ooh.
They're not taking 2 years off. They're not letting that happen to that team. I haven't looked too deeply into it, but one of my closest friends is a massive Michigan fan, so we know that he tells me all the time that what they're going to be doing this next season. My little dark horse is the UNC. I think that Bill Belichick is going to be proving a lot of people that he belongs in college football. I don't know if he's going to do top 5, but I'd say possibly even make it up to the 10, at least in the preseason. I think that Georgia's definitely going to come back this next season. And so that would probably be the next one. And I'm trying to find another little extra team that I think, because I've looked at like this past year and everything like that, and I'd say Texas is definitely going to be the favorite going into the season. So I haven't really looked too much beyond that, but those are definitely some of the teams that I think will be in the top 5, at least to start the season. And we'll definitely see what happens. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if Miami's up there.
Oh, Carson Beck, I feel it. And
Yeah.
if you got a top 5, top 10, who you got, man? Talk to me. Who you think is going to do what they do?
Yeah, I think Texas, I nodded my head along. I think they're going to be a top 5 team. I think one of the more interesting aspects here, I think 2 and 3 are going to be some combination of Penn State and Ohio State. I think Penn State has the better roster coming back. Ohio State has the better overall playmaker coming back, and Jeremiah Smith is just going to be about, can they find a quarterback? And it sounds like right now they're looking at Julian Sayin is probably going to be quarterback 1 next year, but again, unproven quarterback, not quite what you got in Will Howard, where Will Howard gave you a safety net. This feels a little bit more volatile here. So after those two, I think you're going to be looking at Georgia. Gunnar Stockton looked great in his appearances in the playoff. I think he's going to do well with an offseason as the number 1 guy. I think then you look at Notre Dame if they can find a quarterback, but they might have one on roster, and Jelly looked really good there. So if he's the quarterback there, I trust Notre Dame a lot there. Mm-hmm. And then, if you're going through 6 through 10, I think Oregon's going to be in that conversation. LSU is going to be in that conversation. Ole Miss is going to try to spend to be in that conversation. Miami has already spent to be in that conversation. I think South Carolina, everybody's really high on them. But I think that a team that not a lot of people are talking about right now is, I think we're looking at Clemson. Like, Clemson is going to be the favorite going into the ACC. They're the reigning ACC champions. SMU is going to be dealing with a lot of roster turnover. They're trying to buy certain positions here. But I think Cade Klubnik is going to be a dark horse Heisman candidate. I think he's going to be one of the top 5 in terms of odds, but I think he's going to be someone who gets a lot of play early in the season. And again, I think after this past year, we saw Dabo starting to change the way that he approaches the portal. He's using a little bit more. They're paying some players a little bit more. I think Clemson sees the writing on the wall that they can't get out of the ACC unless they go back to being the dominant power in the ACC. And I think that they are laser focused in on figuring out how to go back to the playoff every single year and being back in that Final Four conversation every single year.
Yeah. Listen, I agree with you guys, the teams you threw out. I mean, a lot of them makes a lot of sense to me. If I had to list the top 5, I would go Texas number 1. I think that they have what they need on campus already, with the wide receiver room, the running back room, the quarterback room, the defense. They already have what they need. They're not portal heavy. I would go Penn State number 2. Penn State is falling in the lineage of the Michigan, of the Ohio State. The guys come back together to come back for one more run. Singleton came back. Allen came back. Drew Aller came back. The issue for them is who's going to play wide receiver. They got to get some outside threats. If not, they're done. I would go number 3 with Ohio State. Now, for you guys that don't know, there's a quarterback battle at Ohio State. I know everybody says Julian Sayin, but that kid, Tavion St. Clair, is real. 6'4", 225, true freshman quarterback, can do everything. The last 2 quarterbacks we had, including C.J. Stroud, he's Justin Fields' body, C.J. Stroud's arm. That's saying some stuff. There is a quarterback battle in Columbus. Believe me, it is. It's not just an open and shut case. Tavion's going to push for that starting job. So I go Ohio State 3. Number 4, and this may be my surprise, the South Carolina Gamecocks. Lenora Sellers, Stewart, those dudes are going to cause problems, right? They hit an out of the park recruiting class. They hit the portal. They're not to be played with in the SEC, right? I actually have them ranked the number 2 SEC team. right? And my number 5 is Tennessee Volunteers. I think Nico and them is going to have something to prove. Now, they lost Pierce. They lost LD of the guy, the middle linebacker that got hurt for them, the 6'4", 220-pound middle linebacker. But, man, they're coming back with a vengeance. And they're going to hit that portal, man. And so don't be shocked. And I guess this is my final statement. I wouldn't be shocked after like maybe week 1 or 2. And we'll talk about that on a future show because I sent the schedule of week 1 to my crew. And they were like, holy crap. You know, week 1, we got a banger right off the bat, you know, because that week 1 schedule was bananas. But don't be shocked if the top 10 is heavy with quarterbacks that would be first-round NFL draft picks. Cade Coupland, Arch Manning, Lenore Sellers, Carson Beck. Don't be shocked if that top 10 is loaded with those players. Well, maybe a couple of prove it to me guys in there, like a Tavion St. Clair, like a Underwood at Michigan. Don't be shocked. But quarterback play and surrounding that quarterback with studs is how you get wins in college football. So, absolutely. Top 10 next year, and it's going to change back and forth. Because after the spring portal, me and Andy and Sarah are going to be like, man, hell no. This team right here is going to be, you know, that's all this stuff's going to change because that's why we call it way too early. But right now, that's what we're saying. All right, you guys, final thoughts as we close out the 2020-24, 2025 Level Up College Football Podcast. Andy, I'm going to go to you, bro. What's your final thoughts? And listen, I got to say it publicly. Thank you, too. Great co-host. I love doing this show. I have so much fun, man, because we're honest and open with each other, and we really talk college football. So final thoughts. Thank you, thoughts. Andy, I'm going with you, bro.
Yeah, I think that this was a great season. It deserved the extra time on the playoff that it gets. I think it's going to be a really interesting offseason. I think the sport is going to change in a major way next year that we'll get into with some offseason content as well. But, you know, we're sitting here and we've got Ohio State winning national titles. We've got Syracuse going 10-3, got Indiana in the playoff. Like, this season was unexpected in a lot of different ways while still being pretty chalky in others. And I think that's what makes college football interesting. What makes it fun. And I'm really excited to take a little bit of time off away from football. That's what Sarah and I were talking about earlier. Like, sometimes it felt like there's a football game every day of the week this season. Now we get a little bit of a break and we'll pick it back up again in August.
Yeah, absolutely. Sarah, your final thoughts with the Level Up College Football Podcast.
I just got to say, this is probably one of the best showings to show this 12 game playoff, seasons. I think that a lot of people looked at this as it was going to taint the regular season. It was going to just make it not an enjoyable season. It was going to cause us a lot of issues when it came with the rankings, which I think is probably the biggest thing that we had to complain about. But as a whole, I think it was one of the best experiences for me, especially for me. Yeah, for my first year to actually be talking about it and really watching all of the games and everything like that. So I've had a blast doing it. And like I said a couple weeks ago, like I love learning every single week with these guys. I've really enjoyed it. And it's been a blast. And I thank you both for bringing me into this. And I can't wait to talk about the off season and to see what the next season is. So it's just been a really cool 2024-2025 college football season. And I'm extremely, extremely excited for what's going to come up next.
Absolutely, man. We thank everybody that rocked with us, that helped us build this platform for the 2024. Andy, I remember when we started, man, we were like, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And some of the stuff that we actually talked about at the very beginning is coming to fruition. We had Sarah, intro, breakdown, topics. I can't wait till we do the new stuff moving forward because the people might even like it. They might like some of our little breakdown stuff we're going to do with film and all this other stuff, talking about college football, man. So once again, I thank both of my co-hosts. I thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. We have had a blast in 2024. And we thank all you guys for rocking with us, man. As for me, Big G, my girl Sarah C, and my boy Andy P, go Bucks. Michigan still sucks. We love Syracuse on the slide. Thanks again for rocking with another Level Up College Football Podcast on Fans First Sports Network. We'll holler at you guys. Peace.